According to the Board Monitor Europe 2024, in Europe, 84% of respondents believe senior management should collaborate more closely with higher-level employees. As societal pressure on leadership grows, 71% of respondents highlighted the need to redefine the roles and responsibilities of board members. What does it mean for employees and employers? Today, my guest is Łukasz Kiniewicz, Managing Partner at Heidrick Struggles Poland.
The key factors that influence this situation are basically different risk types that we observe. So these are cyber risk, regulatory risk, technological, geopolitical. There are also new risks emerging on the market, which were not so visible before. During these times, the boards definitely need to be closer to employees.
Let's start with some highlights of the report that were very interesting for me. For example, you mentioned that you observed the trend of much bigger operational involvement of boards at the regular daily tasks. What does it exactly mean and why we see such a growth in operational engagement of the boards?
Yes, we actually observed that 52% of the boards in Europe have the highest influence of a regulator in terms of their, let's say, daily operations. The key factors that influence this situation are basically different risk types that we observe. So these are cyber risk, regulatory risk, technological, geopolitical. So there is a number of, let's say, risk factors that boards or regulators are focusing on. So what we also observe is that boards need to be more prepared from the compliance and regulatory perspective. So they need to invest more in the compliance teams. And there are specific sectors which are pretty much affected in this situation, which are, of course, the mostly regulated sectors like banking, pharma, energy sector, and telecommunication.
You also mentioned actually something which is about engaging more and more external experts, especially in risk management. So could you elaborate on this? I mean, you mentioned, of course, the type of the risks, but on one hand, I remember in the previous report we discussed, you were mentioning that there is quite a big influx of new teams to the board members' teams, yes, or to the supervisory teams. And I remember that you were mentioning that we were looking at, or the board, or the companies were looking for the new type of skills, setup of skills for the boards. On the other hand, this report brings the data that still we need to engage more external experts. So what does it mean?
Yeah, this is true. Because we are living in a highly volatile environment and uncertain times, so the boards are looking for external experts to strengthen their competencies. So we observe a larger number of advisors, and especially in cybersecurity, data issues, and also gender equality. So this is one thing. The other thing that we observed in this edition of the report was the higher expectation of higher involvement of the employees in decision making of the management boards through different types of employee surveys, more interactions between the board of directors and the employees, and this is let's say the current expectation from the organizations.
And is it something possible to tackle? Actually, because I assume that maybe worth to ask about what's the audience of this research. Whether it's only corporates, multinational companies as well?
Multinational companies, primarily corporates, also private equity-owned companies. So different types of organizations. Of course, it's difficult to tackle, as you mentioned, but at least this is the expectation from the companies and organizations that we work with.
But I'm wondering, because you mentioned that actually that's the employees' expectation to be more engaged, to have a better contact with the boards. I'm wondering whether it's a consequence of discussing ESG quite for a long time, and the fact that you have an impact. We talk about impact, we talk about engagement, or is it more that actually they also see that sometimes being on the ground gives you maybe better understanding of some business context, and that can be helpful? Do you have any data about that?
You're absolutely right. So 84% of our respondents believe that involving employees in strategic decisions improves innovation in the company. And sometimes there is this effect of ivory tower when the management board is actually somewhere separated from the rest of the organizations. You can actually even observe in some of the buildings there is a executive floor which is not allowed to enter for the other employees. So we believe that during these times, the boards definitely need to be closer to employees in terms of communication and decision making in key aspects.
Which actually can have a positive impact on business, not only on the social side of the corporate governance.
Absolutely.
Okay, and okay, we have to come back to the regulatory, of course, mentioned by you several times already. So, is it also the fact that actually they observe that new regulations come into force and actually they are also required to maybe have a more predictable environment where you do the business? Is it also the directives? You mentioned the Women on Board directive.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about diversity in a moment, but it's also CSRD. So actually risk management is also a part of the CSRD reporting. So I'm wondering what stands behind the motivation to also on one hand hire external experts to run risk management in the proper way. Is it more business driven or CSRD and directive and regulatory driven?
I would say in Europe it's more regulatory driven. In other markets or other parts of other geographies, it's more, let's say, willingness to open the boards to different types of knowledge and expertise. So I think this is more like a structured approach to addressing certain risks by the regulators, and this reflects in including more external experts to tackle those kinds of risks, like I mentioned. So cybersecurity, geopolitical situations, also reputational risks coming from social media. So there are also new risks emerging on the market, which were not so visible before.
True. So let's talk about them, especially in the geopolitical uncertainty that you also mentioned in the report. What does it mean for the boards? What skills or what approach they have to take to actually manage? Or maybe we are just, in the mode, let's wait and see.
We are living in very polarized times. So I think the boards need to acknowledge that and really build managing across. Start managing across divides. So basically understand what are the polarized views, either politically or related to gender, or so this is also a very important topic that needs to be addressed these days.
Because
at the board level.
That's also the fact that coming in line with the S from ESG, it's also the business goal that if we look at the labor force, I mean, we are in the time that there will be probably the lack of talent is still something high on the agenda.
Exactly.
So I think managing well people that serve well your organization is something also that potentially can create risks for the company.
Exactly, absolutely. And I think boards, what we see in the report is that the boards are changing, especially we are super happy to see many first-time directors being nominated to the boards in Poland, being one of the, let's say, top markets from that instance. So we see a lot of, let's say, fresh blood in the boards. So we hope that this will allow the boards to be more flexible, to be more open, of course, to meet the regulations which are put up on those regulated industries. But I remain fairly, let's say, optimistic in terms of the changes in the board of directors, at least in our region.
Mm-hmm. And now we have to talk about diversity, because on one hand, there is growing number of risks potentially and questions, maybe more questions than answer. I'm pretty sure, I mean, that's what also experts, especially in macroeconomics, emphasize, that nowadays it's actually impossible just to have one scenario at the table. So you have to have more, and to have a proper scenario, so I think you really need to have a broader spectrum of knowledge and perspectives. Yeah. And then we come back to the diversity.
Sure.
So you mentioned several times that this is also high on the agenda, also related to the risks. So where is Poland in this regard?
Unfortunately, we are not there yet compared to the rest of Europe. So we still have a lot of work to do. Of course, the data shows that the number of well, we are talking about the underrepresented gender. So, but in most cases, it means a lack of women sitting on boards. So this has improved over the last 2 years, but we are still far behind the Western countries. Mm-hmm. So this is something that we should definitely work on. And on one hand, regulation pushes some of the boards and some of the organizations to make those changes. On the other hand, it also creates more, let's say, visibility on the market and awareness that this is an issue that should be addressed. So for sure, we are observing the positive changes, but they're just moving too slow.
And maybe one of the last questions I would like to ask, because of course your company focuses on executive search. So on one hand, you have the data from the report. On the other hand, you have your daily expertise in a field of recruiting people to the experts to the as the board members, right? So do those two experiences fit? If you look at who, for example, you get a brief, who yes. organization is looking for in the organizations. I'm wondering what are your takeaways and insights from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always try to show a very balanced set of candidates. Typically, half of male and half of female candidates. Sometimes it's quite challenging, especially in technology sectors, and as it's difficult to find female talent, especially in very technical roles. But this is also changing, and I'm happy to say that in our recent engagement in some of the discussions that we had with our clients, we had the majority of women presented to the client. So we take this topic very seriously, and we as Heidrick, approximately 50% of our management team globally are women, and we are very proud of that. We, as we say, we walk the talk. So we take diversity and inclusion very seriously ourselves, and we also, of course, implement those practices in our daily work with our clients.
Okay, so the next report will be next year. Do you think that when you talk to the people from the boards, maybe also some sentiment on the market and how they see their role? I mean, on one hand, I think also when we talk about boards, when we talk about management boards, we talk about leaders, not the bosses. We talk about well-being of the employees, and what about well-being of the board members? I think that from your research, we see that still, even though there is so much new type of duties that board members have to take, still 60% of their time is spent on traditional responsibilities. So how do they navigate all that?
That's true. I think the most important thing is to build awareness among the boards that they need to invest and look into becoming more flexible, more innovative, include new technologies also in the boardroom. Usage of AI could be also a very interesting option to, let's say, to automate or to improve efficiency of work at the board level. So we see those changes coming, but this is true that 60% of the tasks are typically the traditional tasks, let's say.
And from your observations, also in the boardrooms, but maybe also from the research, AI is perceived as also a tool that is supporting the decision-making processes in the companies?
Absolutely, yes. We use it ourselves at Heidrick Struggles, but we also observe that many of our clients are already implementing generative AI-based tools, both to improve decision-making, but also to streamline the processes. So even at the board level, for instance, there are tools which are, taking notes automatically from board proceedings. There are some advanced reporting systems to help with decision making. So yes, I think this will have a huge influence very soon on the efficiency of the boards.
But the positive impact, of course, can be seen as far as we have the right data in place.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so in 1 year, we're going to see which of those discussed potential risks actually were transformed into the challenges, were transformed into the opportunities. Let's hope that maybe in 1 year, the situation will be a little bit more transparent and predictable because, People I talk to, they often say that we are very much in the mood of let's wait and see. And on one hand, it's about so broad spectrum of different voices, opinion, perspectives, but on the other hand, somebody has to take responsibilities for that, and that's not easy task nowadays.
Absolutely, we are living in uncertain times, and we have to navigate through it.
Okay, so let's hope that your Board Monitor Europe 2024 will help in this. Thank you very much for the conversation, and looking forward for the discussion in 1 year.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.